Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation.
Hello, Michael Matsuda, president and founder of the Martial Arts History Museum. Thank you so much for allowing me to visit today.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you so much for being here.
This is amazing. So I was visiting LA and I said, I have to reach out and get in touch with you because you have been working on this project for quite some time.
Yeah, 25 years. So I was 5 years old when I started. So.
Obviously.
This is our 25th year, so I've been working on it a long time.
Oh my goodness. But this location that we're here at right now, it's fairly new.
Right. This is our 6th week here open.
Oh my goodness. So tell me, what made you want to put together a martial arts history museum?
I know it's the craziest thing in the world to do. I recommend nobody else do it. It's very hard to do, but I started it because I felt it was the right thing to do. Our history is lost. I've been doing martial arts 57 years, and growing up with everybody, it became personal to me. Mm-hmm. And I gained confidence. I fought against bullies when I was picked on in school. Okay. And the martial arts became part of me. And as I grew, I worked for the magazines. I wrote for them. I had my own magazine. And I said, we're losing our history. The magazines are not covering the history. And all the pioneers that came up and sacrificed so much to come here to America, especially from China and Japan and so on, all the history is going to be lost because today all the magazines are gone. Yeah. And we don't have anything out there at all.
Right, documenting.
Exactly. We do tours here at the museum, and every tour, and I've done maybe a couple hundred tours, and there's not one kid who knows who Bruce Lee is. I say, who knows who Bruce Lee is? Not one kid has ever raised their hand.
How is that possible?
I know. So if it's our most popular guy, can't be remembered, look what's happening to all our history. So wow. I thought it was important, the right thing to do to keep the history alive. I had the necessary tools to be able to do it, and I think this is my destiny to keep our martial arts history alive.
Well, first of all, of course, as a martial artist and someone who's super passionate about preserving history and keeping that tradition alive, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. It's absolutely incredible. And I was so taken aback when I was able to walk through and just kind of see all of the labor of love that you have put into this. And it's literally, I think we can safely say, blood, sweat, and tears at this point.
Many tears.
Many tears. And so we're going to actually walk through a little bit. But as we kind of walk and get to see a lot of your blood, sweat, and tears and all the work, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about your martial background first.
I've been doing martial arts. I actually started when I was 7.
Okay.
One of AAPI Wong's students started to teach me, but my formal training came at 8. I started taking judo.
Okay.
So I got into judo, went to jiu-jitsu, learned karate, and then I saw some guy named Al Dacascos come along. Okay. And Al Dacascos was dressed in black. He had these great moves, and I said, that's it. Kung Fu is what I want to learn.
All right.
So
okay.
I've been doing Kung Fu ever since. I've been doing Hung Gar for most of my life, about 15, 20 years. But monkey Kung Fu is my specialty. I've been doing that for 45 years.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And here we go. We're starting off at one of the founders here and so you had told me the other day as well, your passion is really Kung Fu because that's kind of where you gravitated towards. Tell me what Kung Fu's taught you about yourself.
Well, Kung Fu is unlike other martial arts and is our way of life. It becomes part of us. It's never, that's why you see someone doing Kung Fu from 30, 40, 50 years, because it is part of us. Yes. It becomes part of us. And I think that's important. Besides giving me confidence and, protecting me against bullies, yeah. It's restored a faith in me for the arts. You fall in love with it. And I fall in love, the Kung Fu movies. And when they came out in the 60s and 70s, I was there in Chinatown every week, to watch it. And I just loved it. I love seeing Fu Sheng, Chen Kuan Tai, all these guys. And it just becomes a part of your life, and there's no way I can detach myself from it. And the best years of my life has been doing Kung Fu. Okay. So Kung Fu means a lot to me, it really does. Even though I've taken the other arts as well, Kung Fu has a special meaning in my life. And especially a lot of the pioneers I'm able to meet, almost all the pioneers I've been able to meet. And that's been a rare privilege and honor.
Yeah, and you reached out to me a few months ago. I mean, actually, I think you reached out like a long time ago too, when you first kind of started this project, and you said, "Hey, I'd really love to get a uniform of your dad's, and I want to get a picture and all these things." And I was just, like I said, so overwhelmed. And of course, here's my dad right here in our kung fu section. But it was so moving because, like you said, unless people are taught, they don't really know. They don't know what the pioneers have done. They don't know how much sacrifice and their stories, and how all these stories are really kind of what has made the fabric of what we see martial arts in the United States today.
Exactly.
Like, it's a very different thing. Like, of course, you think about ancient China and kung fu, or you think about, karate in Japan. You know that it came from these mystical places of before, but talking about Kung Fu in America is a very different story. And so for you, being an American and being exposed to this, like, what has it really meant that you've, like you just mentioned, an honor to have met everybody, but like just kind of piecing this all together? I mean, I just clean out my room and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this thing. And then I'm like, 4 hours later, I was like, okay, I didn't get anything done because I'm here. What has this been like to basically put together all of these memorabilia? Was it a really lengthy process because you started to have a lot of memories? Like, what was this like?
Well, the whole focus of the museum is to promote the positive contributions of the Asian American community. As both of us are Asian, coming from different Asian backgrounds, a lot of our forefathers faced a lot of prejudice, faced a lot of racism, but they still brought the arts here to America. And it is those sacrifices that will be lost if we don't have a museum. So I felt it was important to talk about the Asian community, and now that we're here, we can add more as a bigger place. But the primary area has always been about the Asian American community and showing the beauty of our culture, and the lion dancing and the drums, and all this is not just weapons and hitting. There's a lot of lion dancing movements and singing and all these different things. Artwork is all part of martial arts community, and it's all part of every country. And then from that country, it came here to America and made a big impact in our movies, our TV, everything else. And that as well. But, it has really made an impact, and I think it's important that that impact be remembered.
Yeah.
And without this museum, everything that we've done, everything that our forefathers done will be lost and worse, forgotten forever. And I didn't want that to happen.
Yeah,
So,
and as we kind of go through as well, speaking of weapons, there's this amazing, gorgeous weapon wall we're coming up on. But because I know you wrote for the magazines, you had your own magazine and everything, and so you have a lot of knowledge about all the different arts and everything. But what was something maybe you discovered that you were just kind of surprised about as you've kind of gone through this process? And you've got these lovely lions over here. I mean, because like I said, it's like a discovery upon discovery. Like, yes, you were putting together this history, but I'm sure there were things along the way in this last 25 years, more than one thing. But what is something that you were like, oh, wow, I didn't know about this, and then because I started doing this project, it's something that came about?
Well, as and a historian, I call myself an historian for the martial arts because I do try to keep track of different art forms and when they came here, and because growing up with all these people like Bang Soo-han when he first came to America, and Fumio Demura when he first was here, I met him in the early 70s, and it's important that as a writer and a historian of the martial arts that I do my best to learn the history of everything. I have tried to learn the history of judo. can trace back this warrior, that warrior, everything. Same thing as kung fu, same thing as Japanese arts. And because most people will just focus on the one area, and that's it. And they don't see the big picture of everything else. And I think it was important that like John Corcoran was a great help to me, just a wonderful help to me. And like him, I focus on the whole area and try to learn everything possible. I did not want to start this museum without learning the history.
Okay.
And by growing up with that history, I remember Jean LaBelle fighting. I've seen Jean LaBelle. I was at Benny Ukita's fights. My cousin was brought Silat to America. Paul Lasaurus, and all these, all that history is important. And if someone doesn't reach out and tell people about the history of this and history of that and history of that, we're going to lose all that. So I thought it was important that I spread my wings, shall we say, and learn everything I can about this and this and this. The only thing that I had the problem with was learning anime history. So that's the big thing.
Speaking of which, it's around the corner, right? So let's take a walk over here to this like film section. So anime history, that stumped you. Yet all the other martial art forms, you're like, okay, I've been learning this anyway. That's hilarious because I will say, sadly for me, I know a lot about Walam Kung Fu. My father knows about Kung Fu. Like he's got a lot of the historical things, but I'm not a historian and by any means. And so it's just interesting to me that like you were like, oh yeah, learning about all the different art forms. That was not, I know you're not saying it's easy, but the anime was the big challenge for you.
That was the big challenge. Like Bruce Lee here, we do a timeline and I lived through this timeline.
But so you're only 25.
Yeah, I know. But to remember him when he was alive, I remember that time period.
Yeah.
So all these little things throughout time and working with Danny Rosanto, working with a couple of different people, you get to know their history.
Yeah.
But so I try to be around it and know in depth because nobody else is going to learn it. Nobody else is going to teach it if someone doesn't teach it to everybody. So the one that stumped me the most was anime.
And then so here we have this really cool timeline as well of a lot of film and I know anime has its place there too, but I love that. So what did you find out about anime that was kind of interesting to you that you didn't know?
The only thing I could go back was Astro Boy. Okay. But I said, there's got to be a further history than Astro Boy.
Yeah.
Something else has happened. And sure enough, I found out, Disney and all that different stuff that came along before Astro Boy that shaped anime that I didn't know. And I had to do a lot of research for that. Like this timeline here, I didn't have to do a lot of research because I remember from here up, just a little research before the 65.
Yeah.
But from the 65 up, I lived it.
Yeah.
So it helps to be a part of that history, even as a bystander, to see it happen.
And so let's talk a little bit about that, right? So as we're, kind of going through the 60s and 70s, and of course we have, the Kung Fu TV show, like so many people. I mean, I remember it as well. And I remember being a little confused, right? Because of course, as an Asian American, we know like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like this is the, the Kung Fu star and everything. But then I remember the Bruce Lee films and I'm like, oh, right. I see myself represented here. Like this makes sense to me. But what did you see as you started to see cinema and as you've seen, cinema change? So like say we're in the 70s, like what was your favorite film of the 70s or one that's
Shaolin Temple.
Shaolin Temple.
With Pui Chan. That was it. That's my favorite movie of all time.
I also really like Kids from Shaolin on the little fun side, but Shaolin Temple's a classic.
That was it. That was a film, and they were doing my moves, Hungar. They were doing it right in there. So that was my big thing. I know a lot of people, their careers came from Bruce Lee's movies.
Right.
But mine came before that with Fu Sheng and Chen Kuan Tai and those guys in the Shaolin movies. And that really, it really inspired me. Even though I was already doing Kung Fu, it inspired me more to do Kung Fu more, to see all these guys fighting the Manchus,
Okay, so that was your all-time favorite. Okay, so that was pretty easy as we get through. So the 80s, of course, and then we're seeing, I remember the ninja craze in the 80s. That was a big thing. And honestly, ninjas still now, I think people are always like, oh, you want to be like a ninja, and it's a really popular thing. It's interesting that our art forms, our traditional art forms are so tightly woven in with film, right? Because that's what people are exposed to, unless they go to a museum like this where they can learn more history. But we're so tightly woven into what we see in the media, what we see in film.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, a lot of times it's very inaccurate. And as we've progressed, I think we're improving. Would you say we're improving?
Yeah, I would say so.
There's, Mulan, so obviously that.
It's good to see you on there.
It's an honor. No, but you think like the accuracy and the intention is have we come a long way?
Yeah, as regarding accuracy, martial arts as a whole, most of it's hearsay. Most of it's hearsay. Probably like 90% of our stuff is hearsay. We do our best to try to trace the lineage. We do our best to try to, okay, this is what this person came in, and we do our best at the museum to put all that together and get as close to accuracy as we can.
Right.
And I think that's important. There are other stories. We're not perfect,
Right, of course,
but there are
of
other
course.
stories that have happened over the years. But nobody dictated it. Nobody cataloged it. Nobody written it in stone, It was just passed on from teacher to student, and a lot of it gets lost along the way.
I mean, and especially, of course, in China, you had the Cultural Revolution, and we
Right,
had so
exactly.
much art
Oh,
and information that was lost. It
Oh,
was such a terrible time.
yeah.
So, and of course, magazines, huge part of the American martial arts experience, because I remember people saying to me when they come to the temple, I cut out the little inside Kung Fu magazine, come and train at the Wallam Temple. And, people have said, this is how I know you all because of the magazines. And of course,
yeah.
now we're in 2024. There's not really any magazines
I
because that's
know.
on this thing called paper. And
That was our connection. That was our connection
Yeah.
to the martial art world was the magazines.
Yeah.
We loved them. I used to have every one of them. Well, actually, I still do.
Oh, I was going to say, is that going to be somewhere in the
I have it
museum? It's
stored.
Michael's personal collection. Are you real OCD about it since you've done such a great job of making things chronological? Do you have it like by year and then by genre and like what's your bibliography or your what is it called, Dewey Decimal System or whatever? What's the system of you cataloging?
Well, what's interesting, the martial arts magazines I've collected over the years, and so has other people. A lot of the collection, and we get a call every couple months saying, oh, my wife is complaining because I have 20 years of magazines in the garage for the last 20 years, and she wants me to get rid of them, and I don't want to throw them away. And I said, well, send them here. Yeah. And we get magazines every couple months, box loads of magazines.
Okay, so that's good for our listeners and our viewers to know. If you have martial art magazines that are collecting dust and that you don't want to throw away but are not going to be, preserved properly, then you're willing to take them? Is this true?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Whose job is it to sort through them then?
That's my job.
Your job. Okay, so we joked off air, but you're the founder, president, catalog creator, sorter of magazines, the janitor, the set designer. You're kind of like, your resume I think is a little too long. I think you need to start delegating some of this stuff out.
I just want to point out real quickly behind you is John Corcoran's outfit. John was probably one of our biggest historians of all time. Yeah. He knew so much, and we were very, very close friends. And the only thing he knew was karate and taekwondo and all that. Didn't know anything about Kung Fu history. All that martial arts stuff, and didn't know. I had to inform him about Kung Fu history. And at that point I said, okay, you guys are losing Kung Fu history. You're not even reporting on it in the history books. So that's what kind of helped me push forward and making sure Kung Fu history won't be lost by including everything, not only the Joe Lewises and the Bill Wallace, but your father, Arkwai Wong, and so many people that are getting lost in the mix.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, let's not let them get lost. Let's have a place. So I was very thankful for John connecting me and helping open my eyes to see, okay, we need to focus more on Kung Fu. If you don't know anything about Arkwai Wong, or Lao Ban, you should know. You guys are the historian. So even though we don't have many historians here left that are still with us, I think it's important that the museum become that historian and preserve that history.
Yeah, and I will say to you, because of course, like through my father and the relationships I've had with his, Kung Fu cousins and brothers and things, a lot of them are not really open to sharing these stories and talking, right? But then it becomes our responsibility to be a little nosy about it and go, no, tell me the stories, because like you said, it's all done very much word of mouth and passing down through generations. And of course you get where the telephone game, right? Where like the story, so it's important to video and document it properly. And then like you said, we do the best we can. We're not saying, hey, this is the last say. Everything I say is the word of all martial arts, but we do the best we can to document.
Exactly.
And I mean, here we are in that anime section that you said gave you so much that stumped you. Look, I watched some of these. I mean, the Spirited Away, the Miyazaki films are just amazing.
Oh, they were wonderful.
Yeah,
I loved them.
I love Full Metal Alchemist. And, the Naruto thing, I think, has really, like, the kids, they just love it. It's super popular. But speaking of our founders and speaking of so many that have contributed, if they're not in entertainment, which is what the area of the museum we just walked through, you're right, they get lost. Because if they didn't star in a major motion picture or have like that moment of quote unquote fame, they are not really going to be remembered. And most of our older masters didn't really do that kind of thing. Like they weren't really, that wasn't, they were in it for a different reason or it wasn't their thing. But you also have the Martial Arts Museum Hall of Fame, which is kind of behind us here, that, are a lot of some of them are celebrities, of course, but a lot of them are those teachers that just dedicated their lives. Can you tell us a little about what the Hall of Fame here means for the Martial Arts History Museum?
Right. There are so many Halls of Fames out there. And I don't criticize them. I think people should be honored for what they've done. But it'd be nice to have one Hall of Fame for the whole thing. But I understand that's never going to happen. But so I said, well, we need to do a hall that people can recognize and go to with accuracy, as much accuracy as we can. And I thought it's important that we honor those who have made historic changes in the world, America or in the world. And that's what the Hall of Fame is about. It's about history. It's these people who have gone beyond and changed the course of history for the martial arts. And it is nominated by those who are already in the hall, which I'm very glad about. The museum doesn't nominate anybody. We just verify information. But they are very picky on who's in there, and which I'm very glad.
Yeah.
Like the Oscars. They're very picky at who gets the Oscars. Same thing, I'm very proud of this Hall of Fame because people have taken the time to write out what that person did to change history, whether they was the advocate for this or promoted that or whatever. They made history. They're not necessarily in the movies, not necessarily on TV, but they made history. They made a change. They changed the direction of things. They opened new doors that weren't there before. And I think it's important that people get recognized. So that's why I'm very proud of the museum's Hall of Fame. We recognize their historic achievements, and I think that'll carry on for many, many, many decades long after we're gone.
Yeah.
Still be there.
And I think what's great is, because you mentioned once they're in the Hall of Fame, you have like not just a biography, but you have their achievements documented. You have, here's the reasons, here are the contributions. Because I don't know if you're aware, one of the things I'm really passionate about is Asian American history, because I don't know, you grew up in the United States. We're going to walk into this is the auditorium. Love it. You grew up here in the US, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And did you learn Asian American history in school?
No, I didn't. We didn't have that at all.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah,
Funny thing, right?
Yeah.
And so at the rise of the pandemic, my community came to me. I'm of course at the Wallam Temple in Orlando, Florida. We have been there for so many years, so our community is pretty tight-knit, and we had senior citizens who were in fear for their life. They didn't want to go grocery shopping. I had some that were accosted while they were in their car, kids being bullied. It was like a lot of the things you just shared about even your childhood. Not that that doesn't happen now, but I think, like you said, there's been some progress. We've come a long way, but the community was really concerned. And I researched like the number one solution to preventing hate, violence, and ignorance is education. And then I said, oh, okay, well, how does this work? And I looked in Florida, our education is struggling, but I looked and I saw that there were a lot of other mandated histories that needed to be taught. Holocaust education, African American history, Hispanic heritage, women's contributions. And I was like, oh, Asian American history is not there.
Right.
And I said, I went to school from preschool all the way through college, and even in my college years, because I didn't really get to go through those classes, I was kind of in a rush to get my degree. There was no Asian American history. I very embarrassingly do not know very much about who shaped this country as Asian Americans. And then even people like my father, in his own way, has a place in Asian American history. I actually wrote a bill and legislation to pass and require Asian American history to be taught in Florida. And it took me 2.5 years, but it is now required in our state.
Wonderful.
And after our state, we have an organization that's kind of banded together. We have 24 chapters. So 24 states are now taking our lead from being inspired by that. And this is the history you're talking about, not just martial history, but like Asian Americans and what they've done for our country.
Right, exactly.
And also Asian Americans, what they've done for martial arts is a very different animal. My grandmaster, my father's master, would never have imagined while I'm being taught all over the world. He was just trying to, get his next meal and like survive, right? And he was just like, I'm a bodyguard. I'm just here to I'm going to this village. So the imagination of I think some of these pioneers' ancestry didn't realize what they would have done by bringing Kung Fu or Judo or Taekwondo to America, to the world, right? And I think that's, what are your thoughts on all of that I just shared? Because it's very intersectional.
No, I firmly agree. There was nothing when I went to high school at all. I formed the Asian American Student Association when I was there.
Yes.
We didn't do much, but at least we had something, because there was nothing at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to do. I applaud you so much for doing that. None of that's taught in class. And I think the more people learn about us, the more they learn about our culture and our traditions, the more that we can learn from each other and be more accepting of each other. And that way we can fight racism and prejudice because of education-wise. Martial arts, of course, you got to defend yourself. I firmly agree. Every school should have martial arts. But I believe in what you're saying very strongly. I think if we can open more doors to education, and that's what we're doing here at the museum.
That's right.
It is the way of connecting another generation, different people, different cultures, and letting them know about Chinese and Japanese and other cultures and what we all went through and what these people went through and the different things that we have and what we have to offer. Granted, we have movie stars. We have Lucy Liu, we have all these people, but we also have people like Jack Santos. Here's a guy, Filipino guy in the 1940s when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and there was all these groups of people coming to Little Tokyo to burn it down, and there he was with 2 sticks and says, "You're not coming in." Period. And they didn't come in. Just one guy with 2 sticks. Here's this history that's going to be lost. And I think it's important that we have that in the schools, that people learn about that history and what these people went through, the acts that were passed that didn't allow Asians to come here and all this stuff. We need to overcome that. And by education, and I believe we can do it.
Yeah.
I believe strongly we can do it.
Yeah, it's a long-term solution.
Right.
But one step at a time, and without any action, there will be no difference.
Exactly.
Without any, momentum. And one of the things that I thought was excellent, we're in this wonderful auditorium now where you said you've even already had students groups come through over the last 20 years. You've been saying, this is part of it is the education. Can you tell me a little bit about the students that have come through, other than the fact that they sadly did not know who Bruce Lee is? But what are their curiosities and what are their thoughts on this? Because this is not like a regular field trip where you go to a museum and it's like, okay, what are we looking at? I'm sure seeing all these cool weapons on the wall at the very least get them a little bit more piqued than our normal history museums we go through. What has been the response?
When we bring the kids in, the teachers say, this is the only museum where the kids go, the whole time. When I was a kid, we go to the Natural History Museum. We ran around everywhere. We just, we learn
Free day off of class.
Yeah, that's it. See some dinosaurs, and that was it. But here they're intent. Ooh, look at that weapon. Ooh, there's shark teeth, Ooh, ninja. And they're learning a little bit something. They're learning a little bit, samurai sword. What was that about? They're having a little bit of education that they didn't have before. That's why we design everything in the museum with just enough information so they read almost everything. I've been to museums where there's been walls and walls of information. I didn't read a thing.
Yeah. Well, it gets tiring standing there and then trying to move around people, trying to read paragraphs.
So I designed this place a lot for our young people to learn about the different cultures and learn a little bit and get them a taste for something more.
Yes.
Here they're going to learn about the samurai sword. Oh, what does that mean? Oh, samurai means to serve. Oh, this and that. So they're getting a nice education, and I think that's important that we have the schools come. Granted, we have the Japanese American Museum, we have the Chinese Museum, and that's wonderful to have. But this is the only one really telling them about the culture. We talk about the music, we talk about the art, we talk about the swords, we talk about all that, and how it connects with the Asian community and how it connects with mankind today and the positive contributions today and all those PlayStation shows they watch. Oh, that was actual samurai battle, so they are getting an education. The kids are getting, it's fun. It's an exciting place. We have nice, colorful stuff. We have great displays.
Yes, and videos.
And videos. You can't beat that. And we have Disney stuff. We have animation stuff. And everybody gets a little taste of something.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that people are leaving with a very positive attitude about the museum, positive attitude about the martial arts. They're not leaving with, oh, that's a punch and kick, and
Yeah, well, one of the things that struck me was, my husband's a big history buff. He loves history, and he's like, oh, I'm reading about, Magellan over here. I mean, it isn't. I think people will say, oh, martial arts. I'm not really into martial arts. I don't need to go and see this, but I don't think they realize how interwoven these stories are. Right. Not just, oh, this is kicking and punching, but that there is historical facts and historical stories that are so rich and interesting. And then when you start to weave in all the different aspects, and yes, here's a sword, but it was fascinating that I was so impressed and excited that you were including little pieces of history, just enough, like you said, not to be, boring the kids, but just enough to also go, oh, maybe I'll even read a book about this or look into this more. It sparked that kind of interest. Yeah. So, I mean, that was obviously intentional.
Yes. Yeah, what's the purpose of having a museum if nobody's going to read anything? Again, I went to these other museums, and they have so much, and I never read anything, and that was sad on my part. I should have read more. But when you have a lot of little kids coming in, and they're actually reading the stuff, that's when you made a difference.
Mm-hmm. And now for our listeners, because I got a chance to walk through, and we'll show some clips of everything, but this isn't just Chinese and Japanese arts. Like, you've got a wide array of different countries and different cultures represented. Can you share all of the different ones that you have and are slated to have, because I know we're still building and growing, but can you share some of the other ones that are going to be prevalent here?
Oh, wonderful. Yes. The primary has always been the Asian American community. Mm-hmm. But now that we have a bigger place, we have a Native American section coming in. We have a European section coming in. We have a women warriors section coming, African American section, all these Irish section, Latin American, section, all these different areas. And we have an exhibit area that we can do a lot more as well. So everybody will have a little time in the museum. Mm-hmm. Everybody will have a little bit of exposure in the museum, no matter what style there is. Eventually they'll have a little exposure, even just in the exhibit area, they'll have exposure about that. So I'm very happy that we can include the different arts, the different styles from different countries, because it all connects, we all connect. And, I'm very happy to have that.
And because you're the historian, what would you say is the kind of that singular thing that really you've noticed along all the different cultures, along all the different arts? Like, what's the thing that kind of resonates that really every single martial artist from all the different, oh, you do that, me too. Like, what's that one, what would, not just has to be one, but what are some of the things that you go, oh, wow, we really are all doing and practicing the same thing. It's just from a different place with a different emphasis.
Yeah, I always say a punch is a punch, a kick is a kick, no matter what style you're in. Every martial art is wonderful. It depends on what fits you the best. Mm-hmm. But every martial art works. Of course, I love martial arts no matter where it comes from. But everybody picks what they feel most comfortable with. Mm-hmm. But the common thread, we all enjoy what we're doing, and even though we're learning how to kick butt, and
which is important.
Yeah, there you go. We're all learning this together. We're becoming better people from the martial arts. Yeah. And I think that's our common thread. The whole goal, even though we learn to defend ourselves, even though we learn how to fight and do forms and weapons and all that, martial arts makes us a better person, and I think that's the common thread of everything in the martial arts. You know, you can find kung fu in Korea, and you can find, you know, a different art in Afghanistan, or a different style in, you know, Africa, but the common thread that you know, we're all becoming better people from martial arts.
Yeah, very, very well said. You know, it's interesting. My father, you know, had a bunch of lectures in the 70s, and I think we compiled it into, you know, quote unquote a book, but it was just a lot of the philosophy that was just like verbal, like, let's get this out and document it, otherwise we lose it, right?
Yeah.
And that was the main message. It's like, why do you practice? To be a better person, you know,
Yeah.
to improve yourself, self-improvement. And I love that you mentioned that, because again, I'm not going to pretend I know anything about any of the other arts, and I was so excited just even in my walkthrough the other day. That alone, I learned, you know, something new. So anytime I'm anywhere, it's really exciting to be able to learn something new. But I think it's really refreshing to hear that that's kind of your take on it, especially as a historian and having studied all of it. So, you know, how many books have you read on martial arts? And I'm just kidding.
A lot. A lot. I try to keep up.
Do you keep them all? You seem like you would keep all the books.
We have a lot of books.
So will we have a library here too?
You know, that is the goal. You know, I see this as a stepping stone.
Okay.
This is just our stepping stone here. My goal is to have a huge facility with a seminar area that we can work out, with a resource library, with a restaurant, you know, a Jackie Chan burger, you know. You know, I see it all. You know, I like Disney saw everything, same thing. I see it all. Big place where we can just all come and be the home of the martial arts with everything there. Do all your seminars. Just do it there at the museum. So this is our stepping stone to a bigger place.
I love it. I love it. I find maybe it's an age thing, right? But as I enjoy travel, my husband and I travel the world. We're so fortunate. And when I was younger, we would go to museums, but we would zoom through. Okay, we're going to go see this. We're going to see this. I was just recently in Amsterdam, and I'm like, oh, there's this one museum I want to go to, and it's literally like you go in and you look up what you want to do, and it's find a book on the shelf, and there's these like very specific books, rare books, and then you just sit and you read the books while you're there at the museum. I'm like, am I getting really old and boring? Or is that, I mean, but it was fascinating, right? Because I would never otherwise take the time. I don't go to the library in Orlando and sit down and read a book in the library. You know, it's not something I normally do, but I found this just great appreciation for being in an atmosphere that was just different, and it felt different to do that. I'm like, you know, back in the day, remember when we had the Barnes and Nobles or the magazines, you would sit there and hang out, and it was a thing, and there was that cafe feel, and that's kind of gone away, I think, with the digital stuff. But like, there was something very like centering or grounding and really interesting about that. So when we were talking about the books, I was seeing myself like, I want to see Michael's martial art book collection and just decide, ooh, I want to see this one. Do you have a lot of them signed?
Oh, yes, I do. I have
bet.
almost every one of them signed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. See, now that would be in this museum that I went to, the rare book area, where you'd have to like make an appointment in advance and have like your background check to make sure you're not one of those people that's gonna like tear pages. That would be your special collection. So I love the vision for what you have. But currently at the museum here, when we're in Glendale, California, which is pretty accessible to a lot of the different areas in LA, what offerings do you have as well as just come and view and read and learn? Like, there are other events that happen, and you have like a screening. I see you have a nice auditorium here. What kind of events are happening here that people can make sure they're tuned into to come and watch?
Well, we do a couple things. Events is our big thing. You know, events is what brings people to the museum, brings the community together. We have movie screenings, we have book signings, we have art displays, we have we have game nights, we have screenings for special events, we do honor days, we do Hall of Fame events. We do a lot of stuff at the museum, quite a bit. But it's, I wanted to be part of this community, whatever community we're in. So not only do we do that, we've had anti-Asian hate days. We've had days we've passed out small little stun gun devices and showed everybody how to use it. We've had anti-bullying days, where a lecturer comes in, someone talks about that. And then we also do things for the senior groups. A lot of senior groups will work with them, and it's all free. will come and walk with them. People with Alzheimer's and dementia will work with them quite a bit. We collect uniforms for people that can't afford them. We do CPR classes. My goal is to have health classes and other things to be a part of the community, because we've had blood drives and all this, because I think it's important that we have a place that we can get together and do not just martial arts and not just celebrate martial arts, but give back to the community. You know, be a resource, be a place where people can learn about health or learn about, you know, different things. And we've had women's empowerment classes. We have a lot of different things that people can learn from. You know, we've even had classes on people who lost their job and want to learn how to make money on YouTube, or how to write a book, or how to be a photographer, all free. And we do that so people can get an education and learn that. So not only do we do just martial arts events, but we do other events to be part of the community. And I think that's important, to give back to where you're at.
Well, as a true martial artist and someone that's been in it for so long, I think that this is great because it's really connecting the dots. I think a lot of people think about martial arts as kicking and punching, and truly, especially at the Wallum, this is what I try to ingrain into my students. I'm like, yes, you'll get to come here and learn some really cool stuff, for sure. But what I really want is for you to learn kindness and empathy and respect. And that Kung Fu means that you're helping someone else, that you are there to also protect those that can't protect themselves. And, you know, that was all the things that my father taught me. Like, people ask, oh, what was the coolest thing you learned in Kung Fu? And it's usually not a weapon. Well, I mean, I learned some pretty cool weapons. But honestly, what I feel that as a instructor now, maybe at my age and what I've done, like, my calling for Kung Fu is community work, which is why I did so much activism and advocacy. I feel like, what can I do in my realm of as a Sifu? What does that really mean? And for me, that's very much like the community effort and being able to help those that haven't been able to have opportunities or being able to help themselves. And I think you bridging that gap and having these events here shows people that's what martial arts is. Yes, we're super awesome and do really cool things, but that is really what it is. And I don't think people, when I say people, I don't think the world, like, when they think of that martial arts, that's not what comes into their mind, right? And I would love to reframe that. I would love for people to see all that it encompasses, and that it's not just, you know, acquiring your next rank or, you know, fighting. Like, that's all important and good, and it's there, but that's really, really great and refreshing to hear that you have those programs. And has it been really well received?
Oh, yes, very much, yeah. We're very, very proud of doing that. I think it's an important part to do that, and, you know, to give back that way. You know, especially to our elderly as well. Yes. You know, we bring them here and do special tours.
We're also forgotten all the time.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's important.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to know about the Martial Arts History Museum, whether it was from, you know, the ground up, or any fun stories? But is there anything else people need to know and that you want them to know about this wonderful place and this wonderful museum that you've founded and started?
You know, there are opportunities that we get in life. They don't always come. You know, sometimes if we see that opportunity, hopefully we leap into it and be at the right place at the right time, or whatever. And I think we have a golden opportunity right now to keep our history alive, because no one else is doing it. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just a pebble was thrown in the pond. That's all I am, you know. But we have an opportunity now. We have a museum. We don't have any martial arts museum at all, anywhere. And now we have one here. And I think if we take this one opportunity and make sure that we be part of it, and that way 100 years from now, 200 years from now, they'll know what your dad did. 300 years ago, your great-great-great-great-grandson will know what his great-great-great-grandfather did to change history. So this is our opportunity. This is our opportunity. We're not going to get it again. I can say that with all honesty. We're never going to get an opportunity to have a museum again. It's too much work.
You had said the other day, no one's crazy enough to do this.
No.
I'm basically crazy. That's why I've done this. But I said, I understand. From one crazy person to
There you
another,
go.
I understand. I really appreciate, admire your passion.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing the work you're doing.
No,
Can
no.
you let our listeners know how they can contribute to this amazing cause to help keep it going? Or what can people do to help other than send you all their magazines? What else can be done?
Well, they could donate to the museum. We are a nonprofit, 501c3 active, and we accept donations, and that will help us out to keep everything running and moving smoothly. So that way, long after I'm gone, someone else will be president, and the museum will continue on for many, many, many generations. So coming on board, making a donation is a big help. Sending us items. You know, one thing we do is we try to collect uniforms from our pioneers. I know it's hard to give up, but hopefully they have few uniforms. But I know it's hard to give up, but someone's got to save them, you know, because when they leave it to their kids and they may not, you know, keep it in a safe place. And what if they're grandkids and there it is in a garage sale of J.T. Will's outfit, or, you know, Wally J's outfit, or, you know, one of these guys' outfits in a garage sale. And so we try to collect uniforms and eventually have them all on display, you know, even at certain times, whatever. And that way that history is kept, you know, that they're remembered. We want to be remembered. You know, all of us, something that we're here on this earth to do something wonderful, to make a difference. And I think that we all want to do that, to make an impact in America and the world. And when people send us uniforms, we're at least keeping that little part of history alive. So if people will donate uniforms, especially the pioneers, and people will give to help and make a donation, become a member of the museum, become a sponsor to our events, or just visit the museum, that will keep history alive.
Absolutely. And for our listeners that are listening on audio, can you say the website, any social media links that you have so they can hear it?
Yes, the website is mamuseum.com or martialartsmuseum.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. Everyone get out here and visit the Martial Arts History Museum. It's so much fun, so much history, amazing hard work that went into this, and blood, sweat, and lots of tears, I heard. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see the next event.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.